A very warm welcome to the program. I'm Felicity Ezewuike. It's been 5 days since the 2023 United Nations Climate Change Conference, COP28, kicked off in Dubai. Almost every country in the world is participating, taking stock and reviewing how best to tackle the climate crisis and support vulnerable communities to adapt. A fortnight ago on One Slot, we reviewed Africa's agenda at the conference. For very obvious reasons, she bears the most severe brunt of climate change. So far, according to Global Strategic Communications Council, which is tracking promises and pledges made at COP28, dozens of voluntary partnerships have been launched or expanded, and at least 37 new financial pledges made. There are some, like the Indonesian President, Joko Widodo, who spoke at a sideline event, however, worrying that while the pledges look good, it diverts attention from what developed countries need to do now to combat climate change. So what really has been put on the table in the past 5 days? Are we moving the needle somewhat forward or not? What key agreements with clear implementation strategies are being signed? Agreed, we still have 5 days more, but taking stock is always a good thing. My guest is a regular face on this channel, an African affairs analyst, David Matsanga. Good to see you again, sir, on One Slot.
Thank you very much for inviting me on this crucial topic, and thank you very much, Africans, for building up and being resilient on the climate changes that are taking place on our continent.
So it's been 5 days. Before we start, let's establish your general assessment of Africa's participation at the COP28 so far. Let's not look at the controversies. Let's just get your general impression of what's been done.
Thank you very much. At least something, not too much, not for me. I'm a critic of most of the African conferences where African heads of state and the government troop in big numbers, but produce nothing and they come out with nothing. The problem I have is the question of the people who promise, they don't deliver. It takes time. We are told that out of all this, it might take even 4 years before the first money drops in African countries. So these are some of the critical issues. But there was some hope. There was some hope in that for the first time. I have attended most of these conferences. This time I did not go because I was busy in Chad and Ghana, and I was near your place. And I did not go there. But look at this. There is nothing that will change until Africa speaks with one voice. The polluters are not us. The polluters are the North and the China and America. The Western countries, Hemisphere and China are the biggest polluters. And we should not go there to negotiate, to beg, to sit down, negotiate over what? Let's tell them, you are the people who pollute the earth. You are the people who come to Africa to pollute our environment. Can you give us the money? Don't bring in theories that we don't understand. That is my position. But for me, to give you a good hope so that we don't start on a negative approach, there was something that I could see in a pipeline, but it will take time to come.
You mentioned funding, so let's start with that. African News reports that climate experts were impressed with discussions on the first day as nearly all nations finalized the creation of the Loss and Damage Fund. I'm sure you're well aware of it, to help compensate countries struggling to cope with the damages caused by climate change. Huge pledges from UAE and Germany, I think about $1 billion. The initial step to create this fund was made just last year, and some are saying that the speed at which the conclusions came, show of unity, better word, demonstrated how the world could come together in a short span of time to address issues. Is this a sentiment you share? And if you can, explain why this fund is so important.
The fund is very crucial for Africa, the other countries that are facing climate change effects of which are very devastating. If you look across the entire Africa, I was in West Africa last week and up to yesterday. I saw quite a lot of devastating, things that floods. The weather is not very good, very hot beyond, even in areas where you never expected the heat to be. The fund is a welcome idea, but the people putting money in the fund, it is on paper. Look at COP27, COP26 in Edinburgh, COP27 in Nairobi, now COP28 in Dubai. That fund should have started operating a long time ago. But because the people who pollute, the polluters, take us in conferences, we eat sausage and some things and then go out and say, oh, yes, this thing is going to come. And when we reach our capital cities in Africa, we don't receive any money. You have to chase these guys. You have to write to the secretariat, which is not anywhere but somewhere in Dubai, where it has been centered for 1 year. You have to write, continue to lobby, to send diplomats, to collect money. That fund should come immediately because Africa needs it. Africa needs to start repairing its climate. Otherwise, we are in a disaster. Schools, roads, lakes are taking back their position of the 1980s, 1970s. Some lakes were well organized. Some forests were well organized. Mountains were well organized. Snow is disappearing in some places. In the mountains like Kilimanjaro, when you fly over, you find no snow on top. So we must begin now and not tomorrow. Now, these funds should come now, not tomorrow.
Okay, at the heart of today's conversation is to take a deeper look at some of the resolutions and agreements and pledges that have been made, and we're focusing at the moment on the funding. So let's look at that a little further. There is concern that's been expressed over Thursday's agreement, despite the speed at which it came about. Many details, some analysts have said, of the loss and damage fund were left unresolved, such as how large it would be, who would administer it over a long term, and other issues. Do you expect that these details will be tidied up by the week's end, especially coming off you saying it's taking them too long already, considering the amount of COPs we've had?
I am telling you, those are diplomatic words, my sister, that you are using, especially the gentleman appearing on stage there, who is the biggest polluter in West Africa and who is the biggest polluter in the world, the French. These are words on paper and the diplomatic words used to make delegates happy. But when it comes to practical issues, to get the money out, to get the money coming to Africa, African countries have problems to follow this money. Some of this money does not come. You waste more money chasing climate change money in where they promised than what they had promised. So by the time the money comes, the weather has already, the things have gone worse, nothing has acted. I don't know. My biggest problem, for the viewers across Africa, is, are we being again tied on the climate change? Are we being tied? Real neocolonialism seems to be entering through the back door, through the climate change. You remember, I'm a Pan-African, and I will never go without talking about neocolonialism. Whether it is a state in China, whether it is a state in the United States of America, whether it is a state in Europe, whether it is a state in Arab Gulf states, we have to be careful as Africans. Some of these Gulf states are coming out to recolonize.
But wouldn't that be, Matsanga, if you say colonialism is being, coming up in some way, wouldn't that be some sort of slap to the leaders from across Africa who are working really hard to try and negotiate commitments from the polluters, the huge polluters that will help with the climate change situation?
Let me tell you how it is coming, my sister. It is going to come this way. They will give us this money, then come with conditions. They are going to bring us conditions. The condition that we are going to give you the money. The weather does not wait for conditions. Floods don't wait for conditions. Drought does not, famine does not wait for conditions. Mudslide does not wait for conditions. You watch in 2 weeks or 3 weeks, these same countries that have offered to give Africa help are going to tell us, oh, you must observe human rights on this, human rights on this. Human rights have nothing to, even when the floods come to kill us, they are killing the same people whom you are trying to protect on the question of human rights. So this climate change funding should not be attached to any conditions because the weather is not waiting. Floods are not waiting. Mudslides are not waiting. Famine is not waiting. So don't attach us to some of these big conditions. I'm telling you, some African countries whose records are not very good in keeping human rights and so many other things are going to suffer to access this money. And yet, tell me, for example, Somalia, the flooding has taken villages and thousands of people are gone. But there is war in Somalia. You will attach the condition that let's finish the war first, or you change the human rights, or tell us this, or take this value custom we want you to accept. Look at what they did to AGOA in Uganda. They denied Uganda. Let me make this point. They denied Uganda to be part of AGOA. The Americans removed Uganda, Niger, and some countries on conditions. And this is the same method they are packaging this climate change.
I know I've had the conversation with you about resurgence of colonialism and, you know, Africa being subservient again, but we are making progress. I want to believe that we're making a lot of progress. Let's go back to the polluters you mentioned. You talked about us chasing them. Let's stay with the funding for now. The total committed so far, according to a tally by the Natural Resources Defense Council, an environmental group that has been, an advocacy group actually, that has been pushing, is just a little over $576 million. I know I mentioned earlier that there is no clear figure as to the expected amount, but a UN report recently estimated that up to $387 billion will be needed annually if developing countries are to adapt to climate-driven changes. We also know that this fund, tentatively, will be hosted by the World Bank for the next 4 years. And the plan, that's where I'm actually going to, is to launch by 2024. So my question to you would be, is this date feasible for the utilization of this fund, especially knowing that the details are yet to be fine-tuned in terms of who gets what? How will it be disbursed?
Exactly. You see what I've just told you. They have got. Why do you take to the World Bank? The World Bank comes with conditions. That's what I told you. The World Bank comes with conditions. It is going to come with conditions to Kenya. It's going to come with conditions to Uganda, Somalia, Nigeria. They will put. Some of these conditions are very difficult to adapt to. Some of the conditions are difficult for some of the countries that are suffering. So the climate change does not wait. The Sahara will not keep quiet, giving us more bad weather. The floods will not stop. The rains will come and kill people. And when you go and put the money in the World Bank to bring us again in this type of bureaucracy that has helped to regime change Africa, to cause chaos in Africa, to bring down Africa, IMF, World Bank, these are the institutions created by America to make people feel that we have nothing. Now, you see, we have done very well. We had a good conference. Nigeria had its people there. Uganda has its people there. My president did not attend because he's fed up with this type of conferences with long speeches over nothing. That is very good. But look at the countries that went. The money again is taken away and put into a bank that again comes with conditions is neocolonialism, my sister. Look at the backdoor dark face of neocolonialism creeping through World Bank, creeping through IMF. I'm a critic, and anybody who hates me for criticizing will one day love me for having been frank and told Africans, let's sit down, reorganize ourselves in African Union, have our own money. We have money on the continent. Nigeria has a lot of money that if we stopped corruption in all African countries, this money could be put together. We will not be beggars.
All right, we're running out of time. I want to quickly ask you this. I cannot sense what your response would be, but for the benefit of our viewers who might not know or where your thinking is, the two biggest polluters, 44%, if I'm correct with my statistics, polluters in the world, USA and China, they are noticeably absent from the COP28 summit, considering the fact that we're saying efforts have been made, even though you don't quite agree that they are doing enough, that COP in itself is doing enough. What does this message send to those who are already critics?
The two polluters, main polluters, who are still gaining, who are penetrating Africa, who are building roads, destruction of forests, destruction of our natural environment, are United States, which is polluting through its heavy industries, and China. And if these two main culprits, who are the polluters, if they don't come out and you see the problem we have here, my sister, is that we are begging them instead of telling them, pay us for your pollution. Before you come again to take our minerals, before you come again to do construction, pay us, because you are also earning from the construction of big roads, big dams, and the pollution which is coming from their industries. So it goes back. You see what they have done. It's a trick. It's a diplomatic trick, my sister, and the viewers across Africa. They have taken us back to the World Bank. Me, when I hear the word World Bank, IMF, coming to any country in Africa, I just want to run away. I run away.
We're almost out of time for this conversation, so I'll just go ahead and ask you this last one before we let you go. I want your thoughts. There is this story by Reuters. The first paragraph, I'm going to read it as it was written. Flashy country pavilions, corporate-sponsored cocktail parties, and a smorgasbord of side events have turned the annual UN Climate Summit into what some say is a trade show or circus, end of quote. And the title of that story is COP28 Crowds, a Dangerous Distraction or a Sign of Success? That is my question to you. Considering the controversy around the number of delegation, the size, over 90,000, if I'm correct, are in attendance.
Exactly. Some countries took people there to buy perfumes for their concubines, their masters. There is a country that took 900 people. What are they going to do there? This was a cocktail of disaster, a conference by people who want to buy Africa. They have introduced the word carbon. What is carbon? Buy carbon. Buying carbon. My African people must be careful. You are buying carbon, but tomorrow these guys will ask, we bought half of Imo State. We bought half of Kano, of Inambra State. We bought half of Mabila Forest. Be careful. Mabila Forest is in Uganda. Someone is telling us to buy grow carbon, sell us carbon. They might turn up and say, we did not only buy carbon, we bought land. Zimbabwe has sold 20 million hectares of carbon. Why are they coming to buy carbon from us? Why are they paying us and instructing us to do this? These are questions that Africans and African civil societies and African patriotic people who feel for this continent must start asking. Otherwise, the conference was full of of only busy show, busy show, busy show, the Dubai style of busy show. Did you see anything coming out there? They were talking of money. They make money out of misery. We are
I'm
making
sure.
money.
I'm very sure we'll be revisiting this conversation with you subsequently before they're done or after.
There's one point I want to make.
All right, quickly.
Look at the problems that are going. I have been telling people here that Qatar knows where the terrorists are in the world. And nobody has questioned why Qatar. And you go to these countries and you drink, you lunch, you eat. These countries know where the terrorists are. And these terrorists are killing Africans on the African continent. It is the same conference there. I'm sorry. I don't want to go there, and I'm not interested in passing it. Therefore, I have no regret. But I tell Africans, be careful. This is a new colonial trick that has been brought, that tomorrow people will tie us on the World Bank and tell us, we have given the money to the World Bank, work on the conditions of the World Bank, while floods, mudslides, landslides, and other things, drought,
all right, David.
famine is killing us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, as always, for obliging us here at News Central. We appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much for calling me.